There's not a single thing America can't do when we do it together as the United States of America. God bless you all.
So the one thing we can say with certainty about the White House in the spring of 2022 is that Joe Biden is not running it. Joe Biden is gone. In his place are unelected ideologues, people who do not care what the price of gas is. They don't care if you can afford dinner at Applebee's with your kids. They don't care even if war with Russia could cause the destruction of entire populations. Those things are not interesting to them. They care about theories, not reality. So improving the life of Americans, elevating the American population, doesn't even rate on their scale of concerns. It's a pure afterthought.
I think most of us can say without hesitation that back when Joe Biden announced he was going to run in 2020, someone in his inner circle must have known we would come to a point like this where Americans are actually scared. And I hate to start off a video like that, but it is what it is. Good evening, Ape Nation, guys. What's going on? It is Sunday, April 24th, 2022. And I hope by now most of you have gotten a chance to at least see a portion of the live stream from last Tuesday night between myself, Tony Dinero, and Boss Blunts. Boss volunteered his time to come onto the channel and do a 5-hour live stream with us and discuss his theory on the executive orders against the CCCP and their effect on the MOASS, and really quarterback the whole thing for us. And shout out to Boss Blunts and Tony Dinero for bringing that to the table, all that information. Now, the three of us discussed the executive order, specifically 13959, which was signed by Donald Trump back on November 12th of 2020. And this order deals specifically with companies from inside the People's Republic. And Boss was able to line up specific things that have happened in the timeline and fit in the executive orders to match up with some of the runs for AMC, the meme stocks. Now, we also lightly touched on the CBDC, which is in the other order that President Biden has signed just back on March 9th of 2022. And this was his executive order on ensuring responsible development of digital assets. And the bottom paragraph here of this White House press statement, it says, explore a U.S. central bank digital currency, CBDC, by placing urgency on research and development of a potential United States CBDC, should issuance be deemed in the national interest. And you may say, well, what national interest would that be? We're going to get into it. The order also encourages the Federal Reserve to continue its research, development, and assessment efforts for a U.S. CBDC, including development of a plan for broader U.S. government action in support of their work. This effort prioritizes U.S. participation in multi-country experimentation and ensures U.S. leadership internationally to promote CBDC development that is consistent with the priorities and democratic values. And if when you hear the word democratic values in the same sentence as CBDCs, we might want to take a look at this executive order a lot closer than we have in the past. Tonight, we're going to talk about a couple things. I want to get into this subject matter, the executive orders, but I also want to talk about the phenomena known as the fourth turning, the period of time that we possibly are in right now, according to cycles that have run throughout history, and what this has to do with AMC and the MOASS. And I've been saving this for a long time, so we're going to start tonight. It's going to be about a week long worth of videos, but we're going to break down the fourth turning and the theory behind the generations. So, before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
shoot the speeder.
This is the way.
whenever you're discussing global economies, digital currencies, the Great Reset, or even the fourth turning, you can't have that kind of discussion without including the IMF or the International Monetary Fund. They were just in DC this past week, And these are some of the greatest financial minds ever assembled. Now, on Thursday afternoon of the meetings, there was a discussion between some of the directors of the IMF, and it looks like a journalist who's asking them questions. And I want you guys to take a listen to what the director of the IMF said about our current financial system right now.
I think we are not paying sufficient attention to the law of unintended consequences. We take decisions with an objective in mind and rarely think through what may happen that is not our objective. And then we wrestle with the impact of it. Take any decision that is a massive decision, like the decision that we need to spend to support the economy. At that time, we did recognize that may lead to too much money in circulation, too few goods, but didn't really quite think through the consequence in a way that upfront would have informed better what we do. And I subscribe entirely to what Christine said about climate shocks. We are already out of time. And
in case you haven't been properly introduced, that is the director of the IMF, as you saw, Kristalina Georgieva. And she came right out and said, we are facing these issues that we're facing right now, primarily because the most brilliant minds in finance and global economies didn't understand the unintended consequences of printing too much fiat currency. She says that, they wrestle with the impact of these decisions. But do you think any of the people that are sitting up on that board actually face any consequences for the decisions that they make? Some people actually believe that the IMF, the board of directors, knew that printing too much money was going to cause out of control inflation and possibly lead to some type of financial collapse. And the tweet here by Benny in the thread says, they knew what they were doing. It was a choice by the ruling elite to avoid accountability. If they didn't increase government spending, the current world order would have collapsed decades ago. They were hoping to buy time and find some other solution. And further down in the Twitter thread, Mohammed says, are we supposed to believe that the so-called global financial experts mispredicting the effects of flooding the markets with fiat money? Are these amateurs? No, I don't buy it. This is a prelude for the Great Reset and the digital currency. So the IMF's story is this was an unintended consequence of printing too much money. And they didn't see this coming that far down the road. They weren't looking far enough. And now they really want to focus on climate change, even though we still haven't gotten the financial crisis under control yet. You saw how fast the director was ready to pivot from financial to climate. And it's in the wording of the bills they're writing right now. Climate is all over these bills. The Build Back Better bill is all over the place. Now, just because I think Mohammed is onto something doesn't mean that he's necessarily correct. The only reason I think I'm taking his side so heavily when it comes to this particular policy and possibly a reset in a digital currency being implemented is because of this book, The Fourth Turning. For those of you who don't know, it was written back in 1997, and I want to pull just a small part of the book out, put it up in the video, and illustrate it so you can see what the next week of videos is going to be talking about.
Throughout our history, we've had these 80-year blocks, and the 80-year blocks have been remarkably similar to each other. We're in one now. The first turning, the first season, is a high, an upbeat era. The second turning is an awakening, a passionate era. The third turning is an unraveling, a downcast era. And the fourth turning, well, sorry, but fourth turnings suck. The fourth turning is a crisis, an era of upheaval. We're in a fourth turning right now.
So I don't want to spoil what's coming the next few days. I understand that was a very small clip, and I provided zero context for the information you just saw. So I understand not everyone's going to probably pick up on what that is. but I really want to take our time with this going forward, at least over the next few days, to break down this generational theory that the authors came up with for the fourth turning. Basically, it's a theory of recurring generational cycles in the United States and also global history, right? According to the theory, historical events are associated with recurring generational personas. Each generational persona unleashes a new era called a turning, lasting around 20 to 25 years, in which a new social, political, and economic climate mood exists. They are part of a larger cyclical cyclum, a long human life which usually spans between 80 to 100 years, although some saecula have lasted longer. The theory states that a crisis recurs in American history after every cyclum, which is followed by a recovery or high. During this recovery, institutions and communitarian values are strong, ultimately succeeding generational archetypes attack and weaken institutions in the name of autonomy and individualism, which eventually creates a tumultuous political environment that ripens conditions for another crisis. Now, this generational theory can be really hard to follow sometimes. You have to break everything down and then use history to see if you can find the patterns. And we're going to do that over the next 4 or 5 videos. We'll talk about the different generations, who are the archetypes of those generations, who are the heroes, who are the movers and shakers. What does the fourth turning hold for us? Because we're about to come to the end of that 80 to 100 year cycle that ended in 1945. The end of our crisis period is going to be somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's really something I think is important that we look into. And if there's anything that we'll get out of this to help us towards understanding where the financial system is headed in the very near future, how we can help plan out for our MOASS, and what to do after the MOASS with our money. All right, I'm going to leave it there, guys, for tonight. It is super late. I don't even know what time it is. I'm not going to look. As always, guys, thank you so much for all the views, the likes, the comments, my new subscribers, my OGs. I appreciate each and every one of you. We are here to break the wheel. This is Ape Nation. I'm the Massalorian, and I'm out.